Today, I'm going to talk to you about something completely different. I'm going to talk to you guys about emotional intelligence. So we're going to start with a little quiz just to get the feelings as to how you guys are doing, how are things going. So if you can join the Mentimeter app again. And we're going to roll on to the first question, which is simply, how are you doing today? How are you feeling today? Those are good words. Great, tired, excited, hungry, sleepy. I can empathize with sleepy.
Me too.
Meh. Lovely, alive. I like this one, alive. Whoever is not feeling great or depressed, I hope at least this session helps you a little bit into understanding or getting some tools as to how to improve and how to feel a little bit better today. And also, you see the bright side in this. You get to learn other new skills and other topics. And so, glamorous. Oh, interesting. Happy, hungry, stressed. Okay. All of these things are very valid. So if we move on to the next slide, I want you guys to let me know, in your opinion, what is emotional intelligence? I don't know. It's fair. That's why we're here today. Empathy, understanding, understandable, emotions, mental health, people, knowing your emotions. All right, a lot of answers are coming in. I really appreciate the engagement. And to a certain extent, we're all correct. Emotional intelligence is all of those things and a little bit more. We're going to go into details further along in this presentation. Feelings, emotions, mental health, understanding, all of those things make part of what emotional intelligence is. So it's great to see that you guys already have some sort of concept of what it is. But hopefully today you'll get a little bit more insights, but more importantly, you will understand the importance of emotional intelligence and why are we as GE professional STEM advocates talking about this topic. So if we move on to the next slide, I want to ask you guys, do you think that emotional intelligence is important? So if we jump to the next slide, do you think emotional intelligence is important? So those of you that voted no, I would love to know, why do you think emotional intelligence is not so important? So if you're shy, you're more than welcome to write on the chat. Or if not, you can just unmute yourselves and we can discuss it. I would love to hear your thoughts and why emotional intelligence might not be so important. We have, I don't know. Okay. So perhaps some of you replied no because you don't know. Okay, that's fair. That is very fair. So what is emotional intelligence? Let's dive into that. Let's dive into that. So emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, imagine, and manage your own emotions, as well as recognize and influence the emotions of those around you. So essentially, emotional intelligence is being aware of your feelings and thoughts, as well as being considerate of other people's emotions and thoughts, and be able to respond to those in an appropriate manner, either to your own self or to other people. So this first term was actually generated by Peter Salovey and John Mayer in an article called Emotional Intelligence very early on. And then it was popularized by Daniel Goleman in 1995, because these professionals understood that in order to be good professional, or in order to succeed in general in life, whatever your definition of success is, you not only need this a component of the mathematical or the IQ type of intelligence, but you also need to be aware of this component of emotional intelligence and how you respond to other people's reactions, because that perhaps can propel you more in life than necessarily the mathematical intelligence. So if we move on to the next slide, I would really love to know what areas in your life emotional intelligence has the most importance from your perspective. And once you reply, I would love to know why you ranked the first place the way you did. So if you can put it in the chat, that would be amazing. Friends help you get through hard times. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Sandra agrees. I also agree. I would also challenge you. Yes, Fizza went exactly to the point that I was going to make. Relationship with yourself impacts your relationship with others. This is very, very true. Part of our reactions and the way we respond to other people, oftentimes they have to do with the relationship you have with yourself and the way you react to your own feelings. So getting to know yourself and getting to know your responses and the why of your responses can be really helpful as well, to be able to relate to friends, family, and even in school and a professional setting in the most appropriate way. So I think a lot of people focused on family and then friends, your relationship with yourself in school. I will say this is a very tricky question, because to a certain extent, all of these areas, in all of these areas, you need some components of emotional intelligence. So it's difficult to say which one is the most important or which one is not. It depends on what you were trying to work on. But this to say that all of these relationships, all of these types of relationships, you need to have that component. So we're now going to talk a little bit about the components of emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is such a big term that we need to kind of break it down into chunks. So if we move on to the next slide, I want you to start understanding the components of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is important in different scenarios. So at a personal level, it helps you being able to have uncomfortable conversations without hurting feelings. It helps you manage your emotions when you're stressed or feeling overwhelmed. It helps you improve relationships with people we care about. When we're talking about at a professional level, it helps you resolve conflicts. It helps you coach and motivate other people around you, which is critical when we're talking about teamwork. It helps you create a culture of collaboration, and it builds your psychological safety within teams. So this idea that you are able to develop your emotional intelligence and be in a team scenario, it's important to feel as though you have a safe space where you are able to discuss your thoughts and your ideas in a manner in which you won't feel judged, but actually feel valued because you're sharing your thoughts and your ideas and you're trying to contribute to a bigger thing. So these are the ways in which emotional intelligence can be very, very, very important. And there are studies now, or several studies, several publications that are really validating this concept that when people are hiring, way more often they go about your emotional intelligence during an interview selection. Because at that stage, when you get the invite for an interview, they looked at your resume. So they looked at what you were able to do in a work context. They were able to already kind of assess your mathematical, empirical intelligence, right? But the way you relate, the way you showcase yourself during an interview, this will be very important emotional intelligence. And to stick to a team, you also need to manage those relationships. Nobody wants to be with someone that is unpleasant to work with. So that's really, really, really important. So if Rose, if we are able to see the answers that people submitted so far, so what does self-awareness mean? So being aware of your surroundings, knowing the good and the bad things about yourself, being aware of how you feel or others, looking after yourself, being aware, making sure you are in a good mindset, that you understand yourself. But Rose, if you don't mind just scrolling down a little bit more, please, so we can see
sure.
the rest, knowing your limits. That is a really good one, knowing your limits. Control my feelings and influence others. You know how you are as a person. Some people say they don't know. That's fine. I will help you out with that. Having awareness of yourself and your feelings and people around you. Being aware of both your flaws and your qualities. Really good. Manage your emotions. You're aware of the way you feel and keep your feelings. All right. So just to tie things up about self-awareness, I would encourage people that are submitting answers that are not related to the topic to practice a little bit more self-awareness. We're having a session about emotional intelligence. Most people are fully engaged in trying to absorb what we're providing here with. So I would highly encourage you to be more self-aware and understand that the answers to be submitted has to be related to the theme, and also to respect the chat and the housekeeping rules as well. Making sure that the chat and both the Mentimeter questions are related to what we're talking about. So knowing my strengths and my weaknesses, acknowledging that I need to improve and not being upset by that. That is really important. That's actually a huge step that a lot of professionals in this world are still unable to do.
Yeah.
So this is a major leg up there you already have, understanding that weaknesses are actually opportunities for improvement. Weaknesses are actually just ways of developing your skills as well. So this is great. I really like that answer.
Yeah.
All right. It seems like all of you are pretty in touch with this theme, and you are very well versed on what emotional intelligence is so far. So I'll say our definition of self-awareness is your ability to not only understand your strengths and weaknesses, but to recognize your emotions and the effect you have on those around you. So one of the easiest ways to assess your self-awareness is by completing a 360-degree feedback. So how do you think you can increase your self-awareness in school? How have you developed your vocabulary for your feelings? Because sometimes we often feel things that we are not even able to express. And so you have that self-awareness, but then you're not able to convey that to other people around you. So again, emotional intelligence and communication are hand in hand. And when we're talking about communication is at various levels. So communication with yourself and then communication with others, and making sure that you do that in an effective way as well. And also, when you're talking about self-awareness, there's a very, very, very important component, which is to check your attitudes and your biases, right? Because all of us have biases, and all of us have some behaviors or attitudes that perhaps we're not even aware of those. And so it is important to take a step back and to reflect on those pretty often, because if you are not accounting for those, then there's no room for improvement. So I'm really happy with your answers. This was really good. If we move on to the next question, we're now going to be talking about something a bit different. So we spoke about self-awareness. Now we're going to talk a little bit about self-management. What does that mean to you? What does self-management mean to you? And a lot of you already mentioned this in previous questions. So what does self-management mean to you? So now we've spoken about being self-aware. So I do this and I know why I do this. I feel this and I know that I feel this. Now we're talking about self-management. We already have some answers coming in.
Do you want me to share them yet, Melissa?
We are at 100. Yeah, let's do it. Helping yourself, being organized, being able to manage your emotions, being able to control yourself, controlling yourself, managing yourself, looking after yourself, manage how you feel. Some people are talking about being organized. There's various levels in which you can be organized. So if you're talking about organizing your emotions, then perhaps we're close. Self-control, discipline, knowing when something you have done is wrong. Take care of yourself, understand yourself, and accept whatever you're going through as okay. To control your emotions and do stuff to help control them. So there's a lot of control and organization. Okay. Management of yourself. Make yourself feel better and make the right choice. Okay. So self-management has to do with your ability to manage your emotions, and it's vital or particularly important in stressful situations, and kind of maintain a positive outlook despite the setbacks. So you were able to reflect on your feelings first prior to having a reaction or an answer. So how do you increase this? How can you work on this? So it's a lot of perspective taking. So oftentimes we're looking at the situation, but obviously the way we're looking at the same situation from my perspective means something. From other people's perspective, it might mean something different. So prior to having a reaction, trying to be a little bit more understanding of other people's perspective. And even if you don't understand, just allow for that to be a possibility. So sometimes, or very often, we're not even able to understand where other people are coming from. However, just opening that possibility that there might be another perspective that is as valid as yours is already a good thing. And a lot of active listening. So self-management, in order for you to manage your feelings and your reactions, you have to have a very clear understanding of the situation in front of you, right? And so being able to actively listen to other people is going to also give you more clues as to how to respond appropriately to certain situations. Oftentimes, when we have certain situations, we tell stories to ourselves and we start divulging in this secondary narrative instead of looking at situations for what they are. And so self-management is a lot about stop, think before you react. And so it's a lot, as most of you said, is about managing your emotions, about calming and controlling yourself prior to responding to something. How many times have we all jumped to conclusions and reacted to something, and then 5 minutes afterwards, like nothing that happened was actually happening? It was all in my brain. And oftentimes that has to do with your biases. It has to do with your past experiences, and it has to do with things that perhaps you haven't had the chance to fully digest or resolve within yourself. So that's really important to give yourself that space to really reflect on what you're thinking and what you're feeling prior to respond to someone else. Because once you respond to something that is your interpretation of reality, then the other person also does it. And that's when misunderstandings and back and forths occur. So we've spoken about self-awareness. So now we know what we're feeling. Now we know that we need to stop for a second and think about what we're feeling and manage and control our emotions. So there's a couple more things that we need to do in order to increase our emotional intelligence. So if you move on to the next slide, I want to ask you, what do you think social awareness is? So what does social awareness mean to you? So we keep talking about this word, awareness, awareness, awareness. So this is really key here. And again, this all fits a particular narrative, okay? So we're talking about emotional intelligence. We started with self-awareness. We then went into self-management. Now we're going into social awareness. Ross put a very interesting question in the chat. How would you do a 360 review? So you guys are more than welcome to also contribute and answer. How would you be able to do a 360 review? Right. I think we're good to start seeing the answers, if that's okay.
Yes.
I don't know what it means. Please explain. I will. To be aware of what's happening around you, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what's going on around you, and aware of dangers. Know about others' feelings. That's good. Knowing when certain things are and aren't appropriate to say. Ooh, this is emotional intelligence right there. All right. When you're aware of what people around you are feeling and the impact what you feel can have on them. Okay. Okay. We're very close. We're very close. being able to recognize other people's emotions. Okay. Okay. Aware of people around you, aware of people in general. Reading the room. I like that one. Reading the room is a good one. All right, absolutely. We're on spot here. So social awareness is being able to understand your emotions, but then also be able to understand people's around you. So it describes your ability to recognize others' emotions and the dynamics it plays within your space. So the best way I can describe this and the best way to develop this is through empathy. So it's the real definition of empathy, being able to understand and kind of contextualize what other people are feeling. So if you go back, if we're thinking about, I recognize my feelings, I then take a stop to think about those feelings and to how to respond to them appropriately. So now I took care of myself kind of in this communication part of the conversation. So now it's time to think about the other person. So now that I know what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling, I need to then take into account what other people are feeling and then be able to respond appropriately. So if we move on to the next slide, we need to like tie all of this together. We need to tie a really nice bow to all of these conversations. So what does relationship management mean to you then? So now we kind of have all of the tools to engage in some difficult conversations, but then those need to be managed and those need to be monitored and improved and reflected on and all of those things. So what does relationship management mean to you? And whilst we are answering this question, I'm going to be a provocateur and I'm going to ask my two colleagues for today. How have you handled difficult conversations in your workplace?
Who do you want to answer first? I'm thinking.
Oh, you can talk. Yeah. You're just going through some, just resolving the audio. So, Roz, if you want to go first.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So I think in the past I have a side to me that's quite hot-headed and I am quite emotional. So I think I've learned a lot. I've been working now for over 20 years. I think if there's a situation and I'm feeling quite strong emotions, one of the things I try to always do now is reflect for a while before I sort of respond too fast to something. So particularly if it's a situation it's a bit complicated or something escalated. So I definitely sort of try to think before I speak. And as you've been talking about, and I've been taking lots of notes, Melissa, actually, some fantastic insights that you've been giving us. I think the key thing is definitely to try and put yourself in the other person's shoes. And I think you do have to some extent be honest as well. But I think it's about being genuine with the feelings, so not necessarily just suppressing everything, but also always being respectful and thinking about the outcome that you want to get to.
Thank you so much for that. How about you?
I think Rosalind summarized pretty nicely. I don't think I have anything to add.
Good. I think I kind of echo Ross's feelings. I think once you grow older, which is a wonderful thing, you start to understand your reactions and your feelings a little bit better. And you start to also be able to pause and breathe a little bit more, you know? Because I think oftentimes there's this idea that we need to react to everything in the immediate. And being older and being able to pause allows you that space in which you have some time to reflect on the things and then be able to respond in the appropriate manner. But one thing that I loved about what you said, Roz, was honesty. And when we're talking about emotional intelligence, the first step is the communication that you have with yourself. And if that is not honest right at the bat, then you can never be honest about your feelings to someone else. And then you cannot expect an appropriate answer for someone when they're not aware of your feelings or your emotions. And so that is really, really important. So I'm wondering, do you guys have any question for us at this point? Any insights that you would like to share? All right, we're gonna go on to the answers and see what we have so far. So leaving your toxic friends, resolving conflict between people effectively, good. Being able to keep a relationship stable and happy, being able to help others with their feelings, how you present yourself to be loved, to be able to manage and keep up with your relationships with other people, such as family and friends, managing your relationships with someone and talking about it, um, avoids toxic relationships, how you act around people, being able to manage your relationships in a healthy manner, your ability to influence and resolve conflict effectively. That is spot on. Spot on. So relationship management refers to the ability to influence, coach, mentor others, and resolve conflicts effectively. So when we're having conversations, especially at a workplace, oftentimes you're trying to influence a conversation, you're trying to coach, you're trying to mentor, you're trying to just convey a thought, a feeling, some feedback. And also part of this is to be able to resolve conflicts. So relationship management is also about making sure that after you disagree with someone and after you understand that perhaps you have different perspectives, perhaps you have different components to bring to the table at a present discussion, then you are able to just leave it at that, accept that there is a differences in thoughts and feelings, but then you can move forward effectively with a middle ground kind of solution. So let's tie all of this up, and I would love to know, in which areas of your life do you feel as though you would need to improve your emotional intelligence? So what components would you, out of the ones that we just described to you, which ones would you like to improve? So now that we know these concepts, it should be fairly easy to know which areas you would love to improve your relationships. I am not surprised at all to see relationship management coming up. And reason being is all of us went through a crazy time a couple of years ago with COVID and everyone closed down. And that is actually why we created this emotional intelligence workshop, because we understand how important it is to have these components to be able to relate to people in the world. And a lot of that was removed from us. So how can you be better at something that you're not able to practice? Or that you're able to practice, but in a different manner now through monitors, through video calls and all of those things. And so relationship management has been very, very, very much affected by distance and by not being able to contact and communicate with other people. And we often now rely on technology, but as you will learn today through the next sessions, you need to have a full context. So when you text someone, you are not able to understand the tone sometimes. You're not able to understand the intent behind it, and you are taking and jumping to conclusions on what you read. Because when you read a text, as much as we like to say, oh, I kind of know that person really well and I understand the tone will always be an interpretation of what you see that person as. And so I think is really important, and it's already a demonstration of self-awareness when you understand that relationship management is something that you would love to work on. And now that the world is open, hopefully you'll have time to work on that. And the best way I can say you can work on that is to practice networking, connecting with people. There's so many good things that come from it. Self-management. Self-management is really, really, really important. Self-management is what allows us, and it's kind of the final step of how people perceive us. So I would say that text that you want to send immediately, or that answer that you want to give immediately, take a pause, think about it. Think why you're saying that. Think why you're talking in the first place. Why are you conveying a feeling? That is really important. Every communication that you have has an intent. So be clear about your intent. Social awareness is directly correlated with relationship management as well, and greatly affected as well. Hopefully with these sessions, we can work on those aspects. Another thing that I want to make very, very, very clear is that emotional intelligence is something that you'll continuously work on, because you're always changing. Nothing is static. You're changing, you're learning, you're growing. Your scenario, your context changes. So every single time you, I don't know, change a job, meet someone new, that is already iterating some of your thoughts and some of the ways you feel. And so with this session, especially when we're going into understanding the brain a little bit better, you'll also have a better understanding as to how all of this correlates and how you can continue to improve your emotional intelligence throughout your life. So if we jump onto our final slide, I would love to know from your perspective now, and after what you've learned from this session, how do you think emotional intelligence can be improved? Ross, what is your best tip to improve your emotional intelligence?
I think I've been thinking a little bit actually. I think asking for feedback. It's sometimes the thing you least want to do, particularly at work. But I was thinking actually, I haven't asked for feedback for quite a long time. And you can easily just assume things, or yeah, I think it's when you ask for feedback and that actually also builds a relationship as well. Maybe that's more in a work context. But I really like your 360 comment that you made earlier in the presentation.
Thank you. How about you, Dimos?
I don't know. To be honest, this is a fairly new subject for me as well. The applied emotional intelligence workshop. Attending this workshop is definitely way forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the idea of feedback for sure. It's something. Don't forget that part of feedback is also self-reflection. So stop and think about what you do on a daily basis. I think before I go to bed, I always go back and try to kind of rewatch what I've done and what made me uncomfortable during the day. And if I felt as though my reactions were appropriate, and if they were not, why was that? So I think having that checkpoint within yourself is a big step. And then asking for feedback is another big step, but you need to be prepared for that feedback.